Alright, the audio's live. And we're letting people know in the world we're doing a thing. Okay, and the thing is out there. And for some reason the old page keeps getting likes, and it's really confusing why the old page gets the likes when we don't put anything there. But I put everything at the new page. I have to figure out how this works. How to redirect them from the old page to the new page. But, okay. It's fine. Don't understand what's going on, but cool. Can you check the link I sent and make sure audio is up? Oop, don't close that. That's the chair I want. Just gotta save $1,200, so you and I can have like the nicest chairs ever. But I can dream. Should I just bookmark that for...
You sent me... You have to send me a fresh link. That video is unavailable.
Oh, because I killed it. Go to my page. It should have the link up. Is that the right link?
I had already closed the page, so I'm trying to let this... I don't know what your username is. Like,
Crimson Bet.
what's the name of the video right now?
Like 1750. Let me go to the dashboard and see.
Okay, I think I see it. There we go.
Okay, so we're up. Can I have control over the thing? Yeah, I think I... Delays about 7 seconds. Good stuff. Can you hear the music coming through? All right. Now I just want to go to where I can see the comments. And there's... Okay, so I have the chat there. Okay. All right then, let's see how much trouble I've gotten myself into, and let's get this army started. Okay, so I don't need that mouse anymore, luckily. Yeah, so this is a major project. 1750 point tournament coming up on the 20th. And here I thought it would be a great idea 10 days ago when I decided I would do this tournament, that I'll just do a whole new army for it because I don't have any armies functioning. And here we are 5 days later, and I've not made much progress other than figuring out exactly what I'm going to take, what units I can get done in that time. So I've got some catching up to do. So I'm going to get all my supplies pulled out here rather readily, and we're going to get ready to get started because we don't have much time to waste. So, my brushes. And let's see, what else are we going to want tonight? Probably a standard. Regimental will probably do us well. And that's probably all we'll need to do tonight, because tonight is about speed painting, not about detail painting. So my finer brushes can probably get set aside. Alright, so what we've got is an Astra Militarum army that needs to be finished, assembled, painted, prepped, ready to go. Army list is done. Now I've shared this live stream with the group that is running the tournament, so I'm not going to give my whole army list away. It'll all get seen at a certain point, but I'm not going to give anybody look-aheads to... I don't know. Something in my weird brain is telling me don't let them know everything up front. So there'll be some reveals throughout the next 15 days as we go through, especially when I come to getting to conversion on some pieces that are not quite what they should be. Now, to give you guys an idea of scope of what we're looking at, this army in total consists of around 75 to 80 infantry units, or individual infantry models, and 6 Chimera chassis and 3 Lehman Russ chassis. So it's going to have a rather wide variety of stuff we're going to be working on. We have 2 basic regiments in this army. We have the Standard Infantry Regiment, and then we have our more elite regiment represented by some Scions out there. And well, I guess there's actually a 3rd regiment from my lore, which the lore videos will be coming along shortly as this army sort of makes its way across various tournaments and trials and tribulations as the backdrop for our lore videos that we're going to do. So we've got 3 regiments here. We've got our more scout regiment, our standard infantry regiment, and then our regiment represented by Scions. And we have also going to have our armored regiments represented. They're slightly different from the infantry regiments. It's all patched together. But it should be kind of fun and come together. And, you know, what's 40K without its fan fiction? So write a little fan fiction for my army and share it in video format. Should be a fun time. So tonight we're going to be working mainly on the standard Bog infantry guys. We're going to be using the Cadian shock trooper models. And we've done a few of them already, a few steps through. Let me bring one of them down here. So we can see here, these guys are being done in a pretty standard pattern. I've taken some inspiration from World War II uniforms in their more drab color scheme. These guys are coming from a very basic civilized world that practices pretty conventional 20th century warfare when it has its interscene squabbles between the various factions on the planet that are all loyal to the Imperium but vie for control, as is common in the feudal societies. So that's these guys. Regiment is the Normandy 99th from the civilized ocean world of Normandy, and they are the mainstay of my regiment at this point, as I still have other infantry to bring up online in other sculpts. I've got some Steel Legion, a whole bunch of Mordians that are coming in to represent a regiment. If you can get some of the Tanith that I'm going to do specially, don't worry about it. The infamous Jennifer Carner, my partner in all things.
Jen?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jen?
Yes, now I've done it. Jen Carner, who you may know from the interwebs or various other places of publishing, is with me as always, probably here to mock me, make fun of me, as well as my trusty companion, the Monster Rehab, the friend of all gamers everywhere who can't get ready access to coffee. So, I have jabbered on because I'm nervous about being live on stream again. It's been about 2 years. So we're going to, let me get my arm out of the way. We're going to bring some of our infantry down, and the goal is, by the end of the week, to have all of our standard Cadians up to this level. So this is all base coat done and a single wash. So I've got the color scheme on each of them. Uniform ready to go, all their pouches set to different colors with their grenades, what all of the OD patterns of a standard 20th century style military in the 41st millennium would sort of look like. And this is where we want to get by the end of the week with all the infantry, so that we can move on to building the rest of the tanks we have to build, and we're going to also need to build a bunch of Chimera chassis. We're going to have to convert an old Chimera chassis that I picked up from someone who was selling one very, very cheap. All the doors were sealed. None of the pieces were on it. We're moving the las gun arrays were stuck, so I've had to do some rehab on that piece, and in the end I'm going to convert it to not a standard Chimera overall, so that should be a fun conversion. Got some basilisks to repair so that we can mount those in, because what's an Imperial Guard army without basilisks? I can't even think of not taking the big guns. So we're going to get all of that done. We have, like I said, 3 Lehman Russ chassis to do, and I'm big on versatility, so all 3 of those are going to have to be magnetized, so they won't just have the options I'm taking in the tournament, but can do all the options in any later tournaments I want to do. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge. Yeah, and we have quite a few characters to do, so those are going to be a slowdown point, so every now and then I'll probably just take a night to do a character and hit through it. So let's get some infantry done here. Let's bring down who we already have into the viewpoint that has made it to the step we are on tonight. Tonight we are doing the armor pieces, the Zendri Dust shoulder piece, helmet, chest piece, and las rifle. And we're not going to do their boot cuffs because it's actually easier to do the boot cuff after I've painted the boots. So already in the nights that I had some technical difficulties getting the stream up and running, we have put together and done some initial coats and color tests on quite a few of the squads, so we're not as far behind as we could be. And as you'll see here, everybody I pull through, all the infantry has been primed, fully assembled, ready to go. These guys have been founded, they are ready to hit the battlefield. I just have to get them up to a standard that is worthwhile. So let me grab 4 new guys to begin with. Set them down, and we need to get these guys up into gray, or up into the Zendri Dust. So first we're going to need Zendri Dust, so let me reach into my paint palettes over here and grab up my trusty Zendri Dust, which I am sure I will have to buy another one of soon, because I've really been leaning hard on this guy for this project throughout pretty much every color test I did, every camo test pattern I did. Zendri Dust featured prominently, so we're giving ourselves a good shake up here, so we want to make sure our paint is good and thin.
Started laughing at my own snap.
You're just a amusing little creature.
I'm adorable.
So you keep saying. Alright, so we got our Zendri Dust. There you go. And if you've never seen one of these, use a wet palette. They are fantastic. If you have not tried a wet palette, you don't know what you're missing. It is a great way to preserve paints and keep coming back to them. So you can see I still have the Zendri Dust from the other nights, and with a little bit of water, most of this will be able to recombine. Actually, in all my setting up, I forgot to get one thing, and that was a cup of water. So,
I'll be nice and
oh, thank you. I could just
because
use
I need another beaker.
just a cup and a solo cup and 2
Do we have solo?
yeah, they're right on the other side. But 2 solo cups of water would be great, about half full. All right, Jen's being nice, so that's cool.
Doesn't happen often.
It really doesn't. If anybody out there thinks the music is too loud or too much, just let me know. It's 40K Theories. Remlay's over there. He does fantastic lore videos and a big inspiration. It's his playlist to listen to while reading your Black Library or painting, and I highly recommend it. Thank you. Alright. Get a little bit of water. My water. Gotta hand it to it. Duncan makes some of the best, just goofy jokes in the world, and as cheesy as they are, I just can't help it. Alright, so let's get started. We've got quite a few pieces to do. We're going to switch up brushes when we come to the chest pieces, but the easy side of it is we're just going to hit right on there, and it's like, ugh, this camera's in a weird angle when I look down to paint, so get it up here. Now I'm actually using a magnifying glass here over top of the stuff, and this helps me when I'm getting into the recesses and details. It also gets me a nice direct light source right on my models. And another thing I highly recommend for any new painter is find a way and a light you like that lets you see what you are doing at all times, and never be afraid to have too much light when you're painting. It can't hurt.
Because nobody likes shadows. you're doing.
Alright, so we're going to do basically broad strokes here, and then if we get a little bit too much on there, it's okay, because we're going to come back and cover any of those gaps in when we paint the green uniform shirts on all these guys. Alright, so we're just going to get all of that armor in there. Touch it off. And just get it applied just so we cover all the gray. It's pretty, you know, I don't really have to tell you all. It's just about getting it down on the model, cleanly, watered down, nice and thin coats, so that you don't get it bulky and come back up. And you want to always plan your color schemes, obviously, so that your broadest colors are going down first, and that way it's much easier to clean up the detail work when you're being more precise later on. Now you'll notice that I have all these guys have their arms glued on them already, and that is not normally how I work. These infantry models were assembled with the plan that I could get over the idea of playing with unpainted models, and that I would go get some games in really quickly, and I quickly found out that I couldn't do it. I play with all my models painted. I take the field with painted models, and if my model isn't painted yet, well, then if I wanted it in that game, I should have painted it. And that's the motivation it is. I don't expect everyone else to go with that standard. I will play against unpainted models. I will not criticize the person for it, but for me, I have been a Warhammer player since I was a young high school student, and even then, I had my stuff painted before it would go down on the field. This was back in the era of grand tournaments and games days coming around all the time, so it was really important in those days to have all your stuff looking as good as it could be, because there was always some reason to have the best looking army around and always something new to get it there. And we were learning new techniques and new styles and new tools for painting almost every week, and it was fantastic. And these days it's still going on. Loving to see the airbrushes come into the community. That's been fantastic. I use an airbrush a lot for the tanks. I don't do it so much with the infantry. I just find I can do masses of infantry with the brush better than constantly fiddling around with the airbrush like I always seem to be doing to get the settings and everything else right. So for tanks it's great, but for infantry, for me, it's kind of a time waster rather than time saver. Okay. So just getting in under the shoulders. On the back of that neck piece. And then let's get down in front and actually hit his armor plates. Because painted armor protects you better. Everybody knows you fail more saves on unpainted models than you do with your painted models. That's the truth of it. The dice gods favor the paint. Or to put that in orc parlance, considering my primer color, gray ones die faster. Which, talk about, Jen, I don't know if I showed you the commercial for the new Orktober stuff that's coming out. They've stuck with their car themes for just about everything. The most recent one was like a Saab commercial about a jet. I would love to meet the new Games Workshop social team. They are kicking butt. Wouldn't mind being on the Games Workshop social team and learning from guys that good. Hint, hinge, nudge, nudge, Games Workshop. Alright, let's see. I think we got everything for this guy. Oh, gun. Right. I always forget the gun.
You do have a problem with that.
Because I'm used to, I normally do the guns a different shade than the rest of the combat armor, but just trying to make this regiment look as OD issue as possible. I felt the gun should match the armor. Alright, let's finish up his gun and we'll go on to his buddies. And there's gonna just be a lot of this. So feel free to come in, chat, leave a message, and just hang out. And I'll be here until my eyes bleed. But that's okay. Then Corn will take an interest and then it can become a blood-packed army. Oh, I'm finally caught back up on Gonsko, so I'm now reading books I haven't read before. And Dan Abnett does not spare my feelings at all. He continues to kill characters I love.
It's kind of his job.
Yeah, over and over again. And I don't know why. It never affected me when Martin killed a character or anybody else, but when Dan Abnett throws away some nobody infantrymen in the cruel galaxy of the far millennium, but when these one or two guys go down, man, I feel it. Gun almost set. Alright. Oh, let me start something. Alright, because I'll edit down a shorter version of this to just live on the channel. It just shows how we get them painted. So, did we get everybody on him? Oh, nope, missed a little armor spot there. Alright, let's get another thin coat on there. Okay. Get that from the back side. Now this is why I would normally do the guns separate, so I don't have to go around these corners like I am, but nothing for it at this point. Alright, so there's one. Let's go to two, and it's going to be a lot of this because there's about another 40 guys waiting in the wings, all to get this treatment. Plus special characters who will get a variation of this treatment in their prettier uniforms. So I guess I'll mention what the treatment is it's a Xandri Dust base coat on all the armor. It's then Death World Forest on the jackets, and it is what is that one? Steel Legion Drab is their pants. And I went with these colors because I was trying to evoke, however you looked at them, a sort of World War II Allied armies, or at least the British and American armies, sort of evoke that look out of them. Oh, it looks like I missed this guy with a mold line tool. Let me finish that brush stroke up and come back and fix that. Can't have him with these weird ridges. So, let me tell you, this tool, the Citadel mold line remover tool, I used to be a big skeptic of this thing. I used to think, why in the world would I need that if there's a mold line? Let me just take my X-Acto knife to it and just carve it down, and that's just silly. That's a tool that you don't need, and I really just sort of kept my mouth shut about it because I figured, you know, maybe some people want that, maybe some people don't like to use X-Acto knives, they're using just clippers. Maybe it's for somebody, and, you know, I don't want to judge them for it. And then, I had a day where I was at my friendly local game store, and I was picking up stuff, and I was picking up new brushes, and it was on sale there. So I picked it up. I started using it, trying to give it a fair shake, and I gotta tell you, I was an immediate convert. I started using this tool to do mold line removal, and the ease in which I can do this without having to worry about using an X-Acto and slicing a piece of the model or cutting too deep or leaving an odd shave pattern is just incredible. Like when they say this makes it easier, better, they're not kidding. It is 100% worth every bit of it. I find it fantastic. And I will never go back. I've bought 2 more since that first one, as I've actually worn them out and broken the handles. One I lost during a move. But yeah, I find them to be great tools, utterly invaluable, huge time savers. And you can see I just went over a primed model with it lightly, got rid of the mold line, and I'm going to come right back in and paint out the fluff. Let's clean him off a bit. Alright, and let's keep going with our trials, because this tournament is not going to wait on us, and a big part of it is painting score, and I want to score high marks. I've never played with any of the guys in this group of the tournament I'm going out to. I've never been to the... I don't even think I've ever been to this town, to be perfectly honest. I may have driven through Damascus before, but I don't know if I've ever actually been there. But obviously looking at the directions, I looked at it on Google Maps. The store it's being played at is super cute. It seems like a real fun, intimate place where gamers can get together, have a good friendly time. Not a lot of walk around or people walking up to them like if the store was in the mall or something like that, you say. So I'm looking forward to a good time. It's going to be an all-day event, 3 missions. First mission is a Scorched Earth modified one from Chapter Approved. I'm not too worried about that one. That's pretty standard fare. That being said, I am going to take this army in whatever state it is in, hopefully this weekend and maybe other times during this next week, and test it with some sparring partners from my local game store, Games and Stuff, over there in Glen Burnie. And I'm going to see how it does, if any last-minute adjustments need to be made, and if I can make those adjustments with the painting schedule. So that's why I'm doing the infantry first, is they are the thing that is not going to change. At the very, very least, we are going to have a nice, stable base of infantry. Whether we add more infantry to that, and that all depends on how fast I get these done and how many more I think I can get done in time. Because infantry are what are going to take the longest here. Because I have committed myself to not the simplest color scheme, not the most complicated either, but certainly not simple. And we're going to have to keep pushing through that to make sure that doesn't become the hindrance it could be. But I have every confidence. I have done armies bigger than this in less time in the past, but admitted it has been several years since I have done it. But I like the pressure, and it's going to keep me going. And we are just going to paint until we can't paint anymore.
So does this mean you're done agonizing over your color scheme?
It sort of was made to make me stop agonizing over the color scheme.
I mean...
Don't worry, I still have 3 other regiments that I haven't decided on yet that I can continue to agonize over.
Okay, there we go. That makes sense.
But the Normandy 99th have finally figured out their colors for the most part, and we're going to see what comes of them. Alright. Still plugging away on these little infantry. This is only number 2, so we are just at the beginning of what is going to be a very long and hard and sleep-deprived road. So, we're going to keep going forward, and I'll try not to keep my head down as much. But when I need to see in that magnifying glass, I do have to lean over just a little bit to get where I'm looking at. Alright. So yeah, we're going to get the armor on, and hopefully we'll get the armor done tonight. And then tomorrow we can move on and get the uniform jacket, the pants, probably the boots, get those done. And from there, we have then flesh, and then the equipment packs on them. And once we get all those equipment packs and everything down, then we can do some washes on them, glazes on anything we want to shine or stand out, like maybe some rank pins or things like that. And then we'll do the edge highlight, layering on the uniforms versus highlighting, and then we'll get them sealed. Yep, and once they're sealed, they'll be done, and then we're going to move on to the conversions and builds there. And it may all go out of order as certain things need to get converted and built in certain amounts of time, and, you know, have a regular schedule of life of things to do around all of it. But every bit will get filmed, and if I don't stream it, I'll definitely be recording it, because a lot of the work with, once the armored vehicles are painted, most of that I'll be doing with airbrush and spray, which I can't do here at this station. So I'll be taking the cameras outside. I might hook up the live stream through the phones, but we'll see how it goes. It's a little difficult to do accurate spraying while also holding the camera phone. We'll see what I can work out there. But the reason I've gone with so many heavy armored chassis is it's because of how quickly I can paint them. Spraying basic armors using stencils, and then go in and do some detail work, dirty up the tires, throw some Rise or Rust down, put some Typhus Corruption in there, and then get some mud on all those tracks. I can get those done. I can probably do a tank a day. What's going to take the longest with the tanks, and those will be videos I shoot during the day, and streaming definitely earlier in the evening for those, is getting those built and magnetized. I will probably, at a much more leisurely pace, prep those kits, do all the mold line removal, cuts, and things like that in regular videos, and then I'll probably do the assemblies on live streams. And I'm looking forward to those. Those are always fun kits. I have not put together a Chimera chassis kit in a while, so I remember them being a rather fun kit to assemble. Except for the las guns arrays. Those were always a pain in the butt to get in there, but I won't have to worry about that because I have a pretty spiffy conversion I'm looking forward to showing everybody that replaces the stock las gun array. Now you might notice on, if you've been looking at some of the models that are sitting behind me, not all of them are standard GW kit. You'll notice on a few of them I have used a variant las rifle that comes from Victoria Miniatures, and there is a reason for that, even though you don't see any Victoria models in my force. I ordered some models from Victoria to match my Cadians, but not be all bros. So I wanted to have a world, when I designed Normandy, was a world where everybody went to war. The PDF drew from everybody served in it, men and women. So I ordered these great kits from Victoria. The problem is they're not quite Cadians, obviously. And I want to get more of a uniform look going. So I have set them aside from the army for the time being. even though when I built them all together, I interspersed weapons. So some of the Victorias are carrying standard Mark IV las guns, and some of my Cadian Shock Trooper models are carrying the Victoria las carbine. And I wrote it in that there's just a variety. And just like in World War II, some guys carried Thompsons, some guys carried Garands. In this regiment, some of them carry the las carbine, some of them carry the full las rifle. Now, what I need to do to get the Victorias matching is I'm just waiting for some shoulder pads to come in to attach them that give them more of the same uniform profile. Everything else about them looks just fine, matches up pretty good. The webbing is fairly similar. Through some clever painting tricks, I can make the armor seem sufficiently of the same make and style. A little bit of green stuff here, a little bit of green stuff there, and it all comes together. But those shoulder pads, I didn't really think I would have the time to green stuff enough of them and get them on there and keep going with the rest of the painting. So they're being set aside for now, and they'll get added to the armor when the shoulder pads arrive. Probably in time for the second tournament, but you never know. They might get done in time for this one, which would be great. It's sad that it looks like if I wanted to take this army up to the Citadel, I'd need to be using mostly GW miniatures. So I have some plans to get some more Shock Trooper kits and convert them myself to female Shock Troopers. There's a couple of tricks I know for doing that from back in the day. We used to, before we would glue the torso on, we would cut away the lower armor section there, which gave it a more profile and slimmer build to the model. Doing the head swaps is incredibly easy. There's a bunch of GW heads that are pretty androgynous to begin with that you can green stuff into, having more stereotypical pulp female features. And then, while I guess they would have an issue with a full model being a third party, I can't see a head here or a head there. And if they are going to be that strict, I understand it's their venue that they're using as a promotion. It's marketing, so they want to market their stuff. That's no problem with me. That makes absolute sense, and I'm for it. And if they want to be that strict about it, that's their house, their rules. Cool. I will find the various heads I need within GW kits already. I will fix up some Dark Eldar with a lot of green stuff work. I will take on the challenge of cutting away Sarita heads, Escher Gangers, some of the new Euclidean Star Striders. We'll see how available that sprue becomes any other time or for order, because it's a great sprue. That would be a shame to have that sprue only be limited to the Rogue Trader Kill Team box forever. That should go a lot of places, and they should expand on that. The Euclidean Star Striders are fantastic. I almost included them in this tournament army because I was feeling crazy. Because that was exactly what I needed to do to ensure that I would lose every round of this tournament, is take a unit that I have never played before into a tournament of... I have not played a tournament in 8th yet, so I'm probably going to get creamed solely on mistakes alone, but we'll see how it goes. I think I have a few nasty tricks up my sleeve in this army, and it is a command point monster. 12 CPs off the deck. I've definitely included one of the command point regeneration builds that's allowed for the guard, and I know the new rule limits me, but with a 12 command point base and the ability to regain even one a turn, so that's possibly up to 6 extra command points, so that's 18 command points I could spend during the game, and with the number of stratagems that we have available to us in the guard, that is more than enough to cause some opponents some real problems. and I mean just really mess with their numbers. I have a little strand of something that is stuck.
Is it dog hair?
It might be a dog hair, but I think it's more just a strand of something.
No. It's just my go-to, because, you know, he wants to help you pee.
I need a better set of tweezers than that. I'll go with the clippers. I'll get it. Ah, what is that? Looks like it got sprayed into him. That's unfortunate. Alright. Get that thing out of there. Whew. Okay, I think I got it. So, back to the paint on the brush, onto the model. Enough distractions. So, there we go again. Man, another one on the back. What happened to this guy? Another big section of mold line. Looks like I built some of these in a hurry. I wonder why that could be.
Are they the ones you built when you decided to build and play a kill team in 6 days?
No, no. Those guys are all fine. They're all fully painted.
I know they are. I remember that week.
So, as you might have guessed from that comment, yeah, I have a tendency to give myself impossible deadlines so that I'll stop procrastinating and actually paint, because I suffer from paint fatigue just like everybody else does. So what I generally have to do is set my ego against itself and go, well, you got to have them painted for that tournament, and that tournament's not going to get any further away. But if I don't have a tournament and it's just some games coming up, I'll just be like, I'll more than likely not make those games just because I didn't get the army done, and that's never good.
Especially when you agonize over a paint scheme for 18 months.
That's pretty common.
Whether it's common or not isn't really the problem.
It's called being thorough.
Certainly one way to put it.
Getting down on this guy. Alright, getting that armor on and around there. Yeah, this primer did not go on as nicely as before, but I know some tricks around that.
Was it humid the day you sprayed them?
Nope, I think there was just a little bit too cold. Which happens. Alright, let's finish this guy up. Okay, that's his armor. All sections. Oh, missed a little bit of armor there. Alright, we missed most of his armor under there. That's why we double check. That's the armor. Now let's get his gun. Alright, that's coming along nicely. Yeah, somehow this guy got all these fibers on him. Very, very strange. I'll definitely have to keep an eye out for that when I start spraying the tanks. Let's get some more Zendry dust out on our palette here. A little bit more. There we go. Alright, let's flip this out and do a second quote real quick. All over. Forgot my last gun barrels here. Okay, I'll go back and do that barrel. And this one as well. You'll notice most of my guys are using the bayonet las rifle. I'm a big fan of having my guys with bayonets affixed and ready to go. Now, while it may affect ballistic weapons in our world to have the bayonet attached, I can't honestly see how a bayonet would affect the aim of a laser rifle. So, on they go. Alright, That's 3. That's just 4. This is one of the first ones I'm doing tonight with one of those carbines. Did I just lose stream? No, I just never transitioned. I guess now I'm probably on there. I would hope. Yep, there I am. Well, that was an interesting thing to do completely wrong for the first hour, but hooray. Okay, so didn't have anything on there and checking the stream, and well, now at least people can see it or see what I'm doing rather than just my little early warning sticker. So what we're doing still, as I was describing to where nobody could see, is getting lots of Zendry dust done on the armor tonight of all the infantry as our first step. We've got about 80 to do. I've got about 40 done already. And we're just going to have to keep going through it. We got 15 days and a lot of work to do. We're going to plow through the infantry, get them done, and then we're going to get on to the exciting stuff like the tanks and the characters. And I might even do some day videos of the characters, or just, if I can't do any more infantry another night in a row for once, I might stop and pause and do one of the characters. But that is what the next 15 days will be. It'll be a live stream at least a day, barring scheduling conflicts, and which I'm going to try to minimize. And we're going to get this thing done. And if anybody's in the chat, I'm happy to talk about any of the lore or community stuff that's going on. I'm always willing to share my thoughts on Orktober, because honestly, if I wasn't getting Astra Militarum up and off the ground, I would be doing orcs. Because I'm in love with those new orc bikes and wingless DACA jets and jump shock. I mean, just give it all to me. It's fantastic. And orcs will definitely be the next army I do after these guard, so that my guard have a worthy opponent to fight, and my orcs have plenty of umis to crush. Because honestly, that's what it always has been for me. It's the guard versus the orcs. That is what I love about 40k. That is what I like reading about. I know most people are into the Imperium versus Chaos and the Space Marines fighting for the Emperor, but not me. I am all about your rank and file grunt guardsmen going up against the big green menace. I think it's just the best of pulp action sci-fi. You can't ask for better. The War for Armageddon was my thing. I was absolutely all about it. I can't wait to see what we get with the orcs over now on Vigilus. Should be a good time for some orc Imperial Guard fighting. And tank brigades versus speed freaks is just something magical to watch, really. I'm also prepping for a lot of salt because I imagine this Orc Codex is going to be something quite special, and when it starts tearing up in the ITC, I'm looking forward to quite a few people crying, because there's never so much crying as when the Space Marines are losing. You can whine all you want about that. I stand by that statement. I mean, it's not that I think that they are a bad faction. The Space Marines are not a bad faction. They're fine. But I do, and I don't think all Space Marine players whine either. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying, though, is if you do have someone who is inclined to be in it to win it, and if somehow their avenue to win it is closed off and therefore they would whine, that kind of person, I'm not saying all Space Marines are that kind of person, I'm just saying that kind of person likes Space Marines. And that's totally fine. There's a lot of reasons to like the Space Marines. Just unfortunately, always winning is something some people see in them, and when that doesn't happen, they get very upset. And simply because it's the most popular faction, therefore when it happens to them, they are the loudest. And that's cool. They're passionate. It's fine. I just don't want to hear it. Well, yeah, I do. It's funny. And, and I will cut some Space Marine players some slack. They're like the older brother, and Games Workshop has brought the new adopted baby brother home. That's the Primaris Marines, and they're not sure where their place in the family anymore, and they really don't know what's going on. They're not sure if they've been replaced by new brother, or if they're supposed to look out for new brother, but new brother is bigger than them and stronger than them despite being younger than them, so it's sort of an awkward power dynamic, and it takes a while for people to get over that kind of stuff. So Space Marine players they're having some trauma right now, and we're gonna let them work through that. The only thing that makes me feel like it's not tedious to have to paint all this armor is when I remember, I just have to paint it. All this stuff would have had to have been built for a regular soldier. This doesn't take that much time at all in comparison. And other little lies that I tell myself. Alright, I'm going to finish this guy up and take our first quick little break, because I just need to get myself a drink. And I just really do love these little Las carbine rifles that come from Victoria Miniatures. I think they're fantastic. I think they're just different enough, but sort of follow the same aesthetic as the James Workshop Mark IV. I think they're just great. They really add some flavor and definition to my army that would otherwise be truly bog standard. But it's these little touches that I like to throw into armies. If I make sure that webbing packs are all sort of uniform throughout the squad. So in each squad, I know that I design it so there's a couple of grenadiers who are up in front, and those guys I always make sure have bayoneted las rifles. Or sometimes I have a grenadier squad with all that way, and that means I've got more grenades on their pouches, more spare ammo clips, and I don't put the meal kit on those guys. I don't put the bayonet in its holster belt piece on those guys, and I try to keep that consistent all the way through, so that when the army is done, it has a flow and a feel and a story of its own that you can sort of follow and make your own guesses for what you're observing, but it all sort of fits together and all the pieces are there, and so hopefully I get a bit of the story I'm trying to tell with them across to the people I play and who just get to view my army when it's out there. And this one is no different. Even though I'm doing it fast, a lot of thought over the preceding months went into what it was going to consist of, where the home worlds were going to be. When we do the lore video on these guys, there's a sector map that's being worked on for them. There'll be some role-playing games using the various RPG systems that are out for 40K now to run adventures with them, with rogue traders that encounter the system I've designed for these guys' origin. And hopefully people will find that interesting and not boring. And if they find it boring, that's fine. It's not always for everybody, but I'll have it recorded for me in my RPG groups, which you guys will get to see on here too. And we'll be doing some gaming stuff along the way, because I'm a big fan of video games as well. Even worked on a few in my time. It's been a good times. So we'll do definitely most of the stuff that's in the 40K and fantasy library. Definitely going to do some Mortal Empires and see if we can't take over the world with the Empire, or right the wrongs and grudges with the dwarves, or take the high elves so we can keep chaos at bay. Definitely, I just heard about the Achtung Cthulhu game that is coming out today. Definitely going to want to check that out. I am a huge fan of Achtung Cthulhu. I've run several campaigns in it. Started out with Weird War from the original Savage Lands books, and then had to do a little bit of retconning, a little bit of mini adventures to make stuff work, but slowly moved over from the Sons of Solomon storyline in Weird War to the Achtung Cthulhu storyline, and it's just fun for me to use the mythos and have the reference there. And I'm not sure why I didn't do it from the very beginning. It just hadn't crossed my mind, and I guess that's why somebody wrote Achtung Cthulhu and not me. And I'm glad they did, and I was happy to pay money to them, and I was happy to get those books, and I can't wait to play their video game. It's definitely my style of video game. I love a good turn-based combat game. I like my RTSs too, and I like my shooters, and I like my MMOs, but a good turn-based combat game when I've got something else going on or I'm doing something, and it's a fantastic way if I'm not doing a whole army and I have to paint something, for me to paint it just a little bit at a time. Paint, take a turn. Paint, take a turn. I found that to be very helpful in the past. Alright, let's finish up his gun. Yeah, and the paint on some of these guys is thin, which is fine, because they're going to get some really, really heavy washes put onto them. This is a Skyborn amphibious regiment, is what the Normandy specialize in, is how I've designed them. They come in via Valkyrie and Chimera, although not so much Chimera anymore, because they got rid of the amphibious rule in the Chimera, which is very saddening. I liked the Chimera rule from 7th edition and all, where they could just plow right over the water. I just like the amphibious idea, and I have a lot of terrain that encompasses water features. I've done several island hopping campaigns for other games in the past, and namely in Privateer Press, fighting on islands. So I have all this island and water and river terrain. And it was great when I was playing with Guard, and I had my Chimeras. I could just come up over the water feature, and that was the big advantage I could have there. One of my favorite ways to do that was cross the river, hold a line there, and as they approached, mount up, come back across the river with the Chimeras, and then have the river slow them down further. But not so much a thing in 8th edition, which is fine. I'm a bigger fan of 8th edition's fast playstyle. I really, really like how quick the games go now, how everything is simplified. There's a few things that I've always thought would make 40K a little bit better, but I'll keep those to myself to my rambling videos. And I'm sure every player has those little things, how they wish something worked versus not worked. And the big FAQ actually went a long way to addressing some of the issues in the base 8th I had, especially with fly. Not that I really thought it was better or good one way or the other. I'm just glad that it's clarified, and it seems to now mean it's better how it is because you can see how the progression goes. They're saying charges happen on foot. There's no flying into people, and it also gives them the ability later on, if they want to buff a flyer, to give that previous way we played it back to them, like screeching dive or something. They could give them as an ability. Okay, but hang on just for a second. We're going to take our 5-minute break, and then we will be back. Stream isn't over, everybody. I'm just away for a second as I'm getting a drink and new waters and cleaning my area. I'll be back on in just a minute.
Do you know how late you're gonna go?
Another hour. We are back. Yeah, so what you see down here on the table is the rest of the lasgun armed infantry that has to be painted. We still have some infantry that are not lasgun to do. Quite a few, actually. But the commissariat came back with the Minitorium supply packs, and I have me a low stick. So I'm going to take a minute to have me a low stick as I just sort of ramble about the Normandy 99th for a minute, so it's recorded and I have something to remember. I will miss you, John.
I'll be back.
I'm sure you will. It's not that big of a house.
But one of my soap operas came on, and I can't watch it on the Chromecast, so I'm going to go upstairs and work on my book.
Which one came on?
Station 19.
Which one is Station 19? Oh, the Sandra Ryan.
The fireman. The fire station.
Are you watching this upstairs because you're afraid I'm going to do what I do to Shonda Rhimes shows to it?
No, because I can't watch it right now because it will ruin the background of your stream when I start to scream over firefighters.
You know, depending on which part of 40K they're coming from, that might actually make it better. But point taken.
Besides, it's too quiet. It's freaking me out.
Well, I mean, I'd watch other things, but I'm afraid of copyright making my video go away.
I mean...
I don't want my video to go away.
Aren't you, like, recording it as you stream?
Yeah, but I want it to stay up on the stream. If you can't tell, everybody, I'm kind of new at this, and I almost got good at this a while ago, and then I got massive stage fright, and I ran away. Because occasionally I'm a punk, and I was a punk at this particular moment, but I've brought myself back, so here I am again, trying to do what I love, and that's talk to people about tabletop gaming, painting. It's a skill I don't get to use professionally anymore. It was great when I did, but those days are past now. I do it for fun. And I like to share what I've learned, game with people where I can, and otherwise just have a good time. But I'm having the rare cigarette on camera just because I don't want to leave the live stream up with nothing going on. But I'm really, really nervous, and I'm sort of just talking and expressing myself out and getting all of that out in this first video where I'm doing the rather unimpressive step of just armoring my infantry. But now I've rambled about not rambling about something I was going to ramble about instead of rambling about it, so let's get on to it. So this is my regiment. This is the Normandy 99th. That's these guys right here. If they have a passing similarity to Cadian stormtroopers, shock troopers, I would not be surprised. I'm used to that. It's their model after all, and in a similar theming where the Cadians are sort of based off of your World War, or at least I've always seen them this way, the 20th century militaries of Britain and America. Not to discount other militaries, there's also a very Israeli Israeli self-defense force on there, and then just sort of bulked up armor on top of that, sort of a mix between a World War II infantryman in either of the two Western Allies, or and a riot trooper is sort of how they're pinned up together, is how I see them. But just so as the Cadians in the color scheme that Games Workshop gave them has that sort of standardized ODs look, which is the theme. I was going for that as well, but at the same time trying to divert away from looking uniformly Cadian. So I took inspiration from some of the other regiments that are in the Codex, like the I don't have the Codex with me and I can't remember their names, but they were the great alternate Cadian units. Just different Cadian color schemes that were from a different world. And I enjoyed those. So I went along those lines. I came up with a nice backstory, a different collection of how they would go together, what their doctrines would be, and things like that. And then I've expanded it off because all of this comes together as well. This army I'm doing tonight, or over the next 15 days, is a company, so to speak, of the Normandy 99th. It's actually part of a much bigger crusade force that I'm building as my whole army. I'm doing an Imperium army for larger open play events and Armageddon-sized events. Or Apocalypse-sized events, sorry. And we're just going to keep expanding on that and adding different regiments to it. I don't want to ever build a single guard force or color scheme bigger than what a regiment would be. Now, a regiment, that's a lot of guys, so I'm squaring it down a little bit. And I'm seeing the regiments from some of these worlds as being no bigger than a World War II battalion. And that's just how I'm having to do it to not have to justify getting several thousand models. That's just too much to actually do. Yes, Katia stands. Thank you, Brett.
Point of order, I'm watching my doctors without you.
I don't know.
Grey's Anatomy filmed first, so I'm watching it, and then I'm watching firefighters behave badly.
My partner is weird.
I like character development breaks.
She's weird.
I like character development breaks.
She has her thing, I have my thing. They occasionally cross, and that occasional crossing would be supernatural, and that she's weird. But I love her. And she thinks I'm really weird, and she loves me, so I guess that is all that matters. Alright, so let's get back to throwing down Xandri Dust, because as like I said, this is a Till Your Eyes Bleed project. There's no stopping. We're just going to go all the way to the finish line until we get there. Just noticed an area on this guy that was a little light, so just touching him up a little bit with a quick coat, which is fine to go back and do anytime you notice it. Light coats is what you want, but you don't want gaps. Okay. And Xandri dusting, away we go. Let's push these guys back up here a bit. Alright, painting around. It's just going to be armor in, armor out. And then I'll be taking lore questions, paint questions, army list questions, fun stuff. So yeah, the Normandy 99th, as I got them developed, I wrote a world for them, figured out where I wanted it to sit, did a nice little star map based on those ones that Fantasy Flight did for their 40K role-playing game, built it out and created myself this nice little Tiburon subsector, or the Tiburon Reach. It used to be a sector, but it has fallen way down. Imperial ranks has been cut off since the Imperium Nihilus. It was cut off once before in its history and had to be reclaimed through Crusade. And that was a famous crusade called the Tiburon Crusade. And wrote up this Lord General Tiburon, came through the sector. Each world he conquered was very fanatically thankful. It had been stuck under Xenos predation for millennia, since the Dark Age of Strife. And the Imperium comes along, saves them, then they fall back into Xenos, and then this Tiburon Crusade comes along and restores light to them. So they start raising regiments on all the worlds that he conquers. And one of the first ones that he takes is Normandy. Normandy is a civilized world with a good manufacturing output, has a civilization and an average daily tech level comparable to 20th century America. And so imagine the different continents as they are all feudal now and fighting for influence, and as they try to make moves from one noble house to another. Imagine their wars being fought in the style of World War II, but with lasers. So they come from a pretty interesting world. There's conflicts rather often. They have. I'm sort of making fun of the League of Nations with the the Normandy government, and whenever that breaks down, which is quite often, you see the noble houses step up and send in their troops. And yeah, I'm still fleshing it out and writing a few stories about it, and that'll sort of determine where our officer corps comes from, is out of those conflicts. And I'm sure some of the fan fiction that'll end up getting written that I put to backstory these guys, maybe eventually run some role-playing games with, will come out of that. So you could sort of say imagine a Man in the High Castle world, but instead of the world being beaten by the Axis, it was, you have Imperial control in its stead. And the people there are quite hardy. Most of them make their living in either agriculture, transportation. The arable lands are very are very dispersed. So they have to travel quite a few distances. They have to have pretty elaborate transportation network, to get the right resources to the right places. And so they gives them a number of capable pilots, vehicle drivers, things like that. And like I said, it's 20th century, so mostly it's armored infantry and mechanized units are the thing of this world. And then foot slogging infantry for every other job. What they do, however, practice is amphibious warfare quite a bit. Ocala is another world with another regiment that I'm building, which we'll see a couple of guys that are getting Ocalan colors later on as I get through this build. Just because the unit I'm taking for the tournament is not one I generally have coming from the Normandy portion of the models that I've got right now. And I'll show you guys why when we get to that in a couple of days, because we're not going to get to them today, that's for sure. Can't miss those mold lines. Got to get rid of them now before they're a bigger problem later on. Should have already gotten rid of them, but looks like quite a few of these snuck through. I've been building this army off and on thinking I would go play, but the last 2 years working for a startup pretty much shot my schedule down of ever getting a chance to get any games in. So I've had 1, maybe 2 games in 8th, and I'm jumping right into this tournament with pretty experienced players, it looks like. And don't even have my army done. I'm going to be washing in there, but I don't know. I'm hopeful. This is how I was when I first started playing Games Workshop stuff back in high school, and I'm hoping to sort of have that experience all over again. And even back then, I was always a huge fan of the tournament scene. The tournament scene wasn't as competitive back then. There definitely wasn't as much thought going into army lists for power combos and things like that. Some of the Games Workshop point structures in the old GTs actually encouraged you away from that. You got more points for your overall win. Oh, pardon me. If your army was mostly troops versus elites and things like that, and you definitely got the most points if you maxed out your troop choices before you took anything else. and you took a penalty sometimes, I think, if you didn't. Not just a bonus if you did, but it could actually hurt you in the long run just to stack up on like minimum troops and then maximum elites and things like that. So definitely a different style, but also it was different rules, different time. Armies were much more relatively in power with each other. There were definitely the winners and losers on the overall scheme, but the mid tier made up so much more of it, and then there were just a couple of super high tier armies that were just almost impossible to beat. Space Wolves, when they came out in 3rd edition, were gangbusters nasty. That was what I played in the grand tournaments back then, and it's what I always got beaten by too. Dark Eldar were definitely on the lowest end of that tier, like at the bottom in 3rd. They had a rough time. Let's see, who else was real top tier? Eldar was pretty mid tier at the time. Tau didn't quite exist yet. Orcs were okay because you could load up your boys, and then when Armageddon came out, you could really crack on some people. But I think even more than Orcs, when Armageddon came out, the biggest push was the Black Templars suddenly became just the best thing since sliced bread. Like, a Black Templar army in 3rd edition was nigh unstoppable. Fail a morale check, they run forward. I mean, tons of close combat troops, brutal chaplains, no psychers, but I mean, in 3rd edition, psychic powers were essentially just a shooting weapon. They didn't really add too much. If you didn't defend against psychers, you weren't really losing out tactically. The number of times they showed up in their various forms throughout the games was minimal. Like, you'd run into them facing off against Eldar, sometimes Chaos, occasionally Space Marines, never with Guard in 3rd. Yeah, it was a different time. It was very interesting play style, and I just enjoyed it more. And even today, though, I see what I liked about those in the competitive tournaments. It's about going, playing somebody you don't know, testing your generalship against somebody else. And yeah, I mean, I find win at all cost armies to be a little annoying too. When they happen, they can be unfun to play against. But then again, it's about the perspective. Was that game unfun to run into? Okay, well, what did it do to you that you couldn't handle? Start working that in as a contingency plan. It's like, what do you do when you start to see that happen? What rare thing do you bank on in your army? What's your tactic for it? What's your counter? And if it's happening to you all the time, it's like, okay, now it's time to start planning my army around that. And I know people will say that prevents you from getting good fluffy armies because you're always trying to counter these whack lists. And, I don't know. I think there's always a fluffy way to do it. When I heard about this most recent list, the 2 slam captains with Knight Castellan and the Guard CP farm, which the FAQ has thankfully taken care of. I think mostly. I think it still leaves some flexibility to use that here and there, and then trading off on the relics and changing some of the stratagem costs. I think they did a good job of balance policing there. Oh, something in my ear itches. So we'll see how that comes down. I'm sure we'll see some. I might see one of those armies in this tournament I'm going to. But as soon as I heard about those, I was like, how? That's not that unbeatable. I mean, especially if so many people are doing it and dropping it every which way. And I hear the Long War talk about it, and their insights are great. But if it's a Knight Castellan that's causing all those problems, and you got the Smash Captains up there, there's counters for Smash Captains. I mean, really easy ones. Like, load up on some sniper rifles, some Rattlings to one side or the other. Throw down some, bring a patrol detachment of Mordians. Let them rank up and just shoot them down with a firing squad. Load them up with plasma. Just knock them the heck down. And then just like the Night Castellan, it just destroys everything. And my thought there is bring a Shadow Sword. Just if it's a Titan class machine that's killing you, that's what the Shadow Sword is for. That is our can opener. Take that, drop it right on that Castellan, hammer it again and again and again. And like, well, it'll just destroy the set. Bring Psychers, protect it with Shrouds, screen it with more tanks. Get in the way of it. Blind that Castellan with Valkyries swimming down on it. Pop smoke. Do what you gotta do. Hide it. Figure out where can you put it on the field. Swing it around. Get that shot off. Knock that thing down. There's always a way. It may not be the way you want it, but wars are rarely fought the way people want to fight them. So I have no problem facing them, but I have no desire to build one either. However, I do like the idea that it covers where it's got that hard-hitting armored thrust from those, forget what they're called, the special Forge World Hellhounds. It hits hard with those. The Smash Captains come in. They do their jobs. The Castellan is offering all that huge fire support and just blasting away. You got a guard CP farm that is keeping the stratagems going. It's moving forward, slowly claiming objectives. Mortar teams in the back just crashing down. I appreciate its universal nature and how it's accounting for just about everything to take them down. But I notice one thing it doesn't have, and that's a good defense against fly. So I would suspect, as much as I think I could crack it open with Specialty Guard, maybe to counter the Smash Captains, I bring some Custodes that are accompanying this Imperial force, which we know to be happening. And I think using the Custodes to do that over the Blood Angels is far more thematic and fluffy to show up. But I'm not going to tell somebody else what other kind of army they can make. Did they make it legally by the rules? Cool, then I got to play it, because that's something that can happen. I don't mind the soup so much. I actually like to see it. Back in the day, one of the things that broke my heart in a weird way, I really liked the Dark Angels. I liked everything about them. But they couldn't have allies. That was their big thing. They would not fight with allies. And I was also a big fan of Imperial Assassins and Inquisitors and using characters for rogue traders and things like that going around. So the Dark Angels and we were not... I was not a commander in the Dark Angels for very long. It just didn't fit my style. I wanted to have Lehman Russes and my guards rolling up with all our guys, and just since that couldn't happen, I moved on. So I went to the Space Marine chapter with the chops to hang with the guard, and that would have been the Space Wolves at the time. So I went heavy Space Wolves. Completely flipped on the lion and the wolf there. And then, ironically, when the lores, though, came out in the Horus Heresy, and as I'm reading, now I just absolutely hate Lehman Russ. And I'm with Lion. He's dour and stoic, and what he did to Luther was kind of messed up. And I'd love to see some resolution there, but then again, we never will, because that's the whole point. But I hate Lehman Russ. What? I don't know, I'm going to get yelled at for saying this, but I think Lehman Russ is a braggart moron who, at some point, somebody told him morale never improves. It is always 100%. What was I saying? Yeah, it's not going to get resolved or anything like what Lion is, but Lehman Russ, I feel like somebody just at some point said, "You're not really a savage, you're actually smart under there." And his dumbass believed it. Yeah, I had to blow my nose there because I didn't want to do that on camera. So, yeah, not a big fan of the Lehman Russ. Not one little bit at all. I really hate his Psyker Rune Priest guy, the one who buddied up with Ahriman and then stabbed him in the back. I want to know, how good of friends he is with Erebus, because he strikes me as I'm a screw everything up cuz kind of guy, just like Erebus does. And I hate Erebus. I hate all word bearers. I find no redeeming word bearers yet in the reading. I'm actually reading First Heretic again right now and forgot just how much I can't stand Lorgar. Just cannot stand him at all. Just no, I can't. It's near an irrational hatred. Just he has so many personality traits that I utterly dislike. His rationale, his reasoning, his thinking, his self-worth, his self-determination, or lack thereof. His complete weak-willedness and being led by the nose by Corferon and Erebus around every which way. It's just too much for me. I don't know if I will be able to read his Primarch book about his origin when I come to that part of the series. I think I might just shy away. I just can't. He's just so insufferable. And then I read, obviously since I'm now on First Heretic, I read Thousand Suns recently. And I have a new appreciation for Magnus now. I before was just sort of, Magnus, maybe he got a raw deal. Poor guy, forced into it. Don't really understand why he went to Chaos after all of that. I mean, could have gone independent, could have gone any which way, could have come back, begged for forgiveness, figured it out. But kind of just really, really weird how he ended up falling, and I didn't quite... Man, I get it. I get what's supposed to happen there. He's attacked by Rust, that was tricked by Horus into bleeding him out and all that. But it's just a very convoluted, convenient plot, which I don't blame the writers for. They were stuck with that lore bit, which was written in a White Dwarf article that they had to stay canonically true to in the end. So they wrote the story around that, and that had to be rough. I'm sure they would have wished for 100 other ways for that to have gone down. But that's what that is. But what I can say definitively with my new appreciation for Magnus through all of it is I kind of like well, before I get to Magnus, we'll talk about the other. I kind of like Ahriman. I get him. I get where he's coming from. I get the loss that he feels with his brother. He's a self-righteous, pompous ass, as they all are. Some of the other Thousand Sons, I dig them as well. Some of them have some interesting characters and personalities. Other ones are very much caricatures of what they represent, as far as, I'm the really angry guy from the fiery temple, and I'm, they're very stereotypical of what they can do rather than being a person beyond their abilities. Their personality is shaped by their convenient plot niches, which is fine. That happens in big stories, especially the ones we know aren't going to make it all the way to the end. It's fine for them to have a convenient personality, such as that. I liked meeting the Remember answers in Thousand Suns for those guys. I would like to know more about what goes on there. I look forward to possibly seeing them more if they were ever fleshed on, developed more. That'd be cool. Hopefully that happens a bit. I know I haven't read Prospero Burns yet, so there's more to go on out there. Let's see. But, my judgment on Magnus. So, after gaining a better understanding of Magnus, I can 100% say he absolutely did things wrong. I switched positions. I will never use the Magnus never did anything wrong meme again. He absolutely did in some of the worst juvenile, pedantic Greek tragedy level, just how did you not see that coming kind of ways. Utter hubris. I mean, he is the definition of a Greek tragedy. I mean, all the way. Which is ironic, because that's supposed to be Perturabo's thing. But Perturabo, I guess he can't really decide whether or not he's Roman or Greek. He's never really picked one. He's big on, you know, Greek city-states and that kind of look and the phalanx and all that, even though he's got a stick in his craw that Dorn owns a thing called phalanx. Of course, there's a lot of things about Dorn that's stuck in Perturabo's craw. But yeah, Magnus... Yeah, Magnus is far more the Greek tragedy than Perturabo is, despite Perturabo's weird, disjointed, melancholic personality that had to be associated with some kind of warrior. So they picked everyone on the Mediterranean. That's cool. And I guess Magnus Mediterranean too for Egypt. But yeah, it's just sort of, Magnus is definitely at fault for all of it. In every kind of way. He was led by the nose, getting what he wanted, telling himself the lie he needed to hear. I mean, the Emperor does have some fault here. The Council of Nicaea is definitely some BS. To do it that way, to not bring Magnus back to the temple and just say, hey, sit here and watch this. This is how you're going to learn. You're now student again. Just, Not where I ended up being. So far, definitely favorite legions in the Horus Heresy from the books coming out. Now, granted, I skipped Nemesis. I'm going back to read it after First Heretic, just because people were constantly talking about First Heretic, so I wanted to get that read. So I read it, and I'm almost done reading it, and it's just, Lorgar. Just, what a putz you are. So, but all of those with the favorite legion amongst the who I've encountered so far, I gotta say it is a toss-up between the Alpha Legion, because man was Legion good. Loved that book. Didn't understand all of it. Some of it was quite convoluted and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And the ending, of course, no spoilers, as everybody knows, kind of makes sense and kind of doesn't make sense, because in the larger sense, it doesn't make sense in the Horus Heresy. But there you go. You've come up with the reason why the Alpha Legion joins the Heresy, possibly even before anybody else. Well, other than the Word Bearers. And maybe the World Eaters. But I think they end up betraying the Imperium before Horus turns. So we will see where we're at. And they talk a lot about the vagaries of time in there, so who knows when that actually occurred, when they met with the Cabal. But yeah, I just really enjoyed meeting the Alpha Legion. I liked how they operated. I liked seeing Space Marines of that caliber. And aside from that, can't really say I enjoyed what I've seen thus far of the Imperial Fists. Dorn has mostly shown himself to be wise and a good warrior. I can't fault him that, but just kind of a jackass and an asshole, and his Legion is just too uptight and stuffy for me. They just really are. I don't know what to do with them there. And I don't know, I haven't really seen the White Scars yet. Every White Scar I've seen, however, to this point, I have really, really liked. Even the Dark Angels in the Heresy, I was just sort of like, okay. Like, read Descent of Angels, and I really liked Descent of Angels, actually. I know everybody else is like, oh, it's the worst one. No, I liked this. I really did like Descent of Angels. I liked reading about. I know some people were like expecting a Dark Angels crazy book about, you know, space combat, but I really enjoyed reading about the Order and seeing a feral society with bolt pistols for the knights and like pseudo power armor, which I imagine for them was kind of like Fallout power armor on them. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was an interesting romp and a different take on it. However, Angels of Caliban. Whoa, lordy. Was that actually pretty painful to get through and pretty disappointing in the end, as it was one big tease. Like, hey, you know that thing about the Dark Angels and their mystery and the whole mystery that's going on there? Well, here's some more mystery going on. It resolved nothing. As a matter of fact, it didn't even resolve anything for the characters in the book. They sit open-ended. Now, I know there's another book for the Dark Angels where we learn more about what's going on, and so I'm waiting. I'm reading the series patiently, but right now, woefully unimpressed with the Dark Angels in the Horus Heresy era. Just not liking what they got going on, not liking who is who, how the Lion is leading things. And I mean, I like the Lion. I respect him personally. But not a big fan of his battle record so far here. So we'll see how that continues to go and shape up as I keep reading the Heresy. But yeah, the White Scars are pretty good. The Stormseer you meet at the Council of Nicaea, good guy, speaks his mind, speaks it honestly, openly, stands for Magnus. Like, you know, this guy got his teachings and knows what to do, mostly because of the research Magnus has done, and he stands up for it, and he gets the other librarians to stand up for it, and he speaks eloquently. I like it. And then the other White Scar I remember meeting thus far is when the Dark Angels come and relieve the White Scars at the world where the thing happened, and the Dark Angels have their first falling out and all of that. Just liked the short interaction there. The guy was interesting to talk to. That was good stuff. I keep forgetting that I have read the book Battle for the Abyss, or Battle of the Abyss, because it's just so unremarkable despite it being of huge tactical importance that it goes down. I liked the Thousand Son I met in there. I was wondering what was going on with him all through Thousand Sons. Like, are we going to mention him? What are we going to do with this? What's going on here? But yeah, we're going to have to wait and see, and as I get through the rest of them to get my comments on them. I really was unimpressed with the Death Guard, other than Nathaniel Garrow, which I know I was supposed to be impressed with Nathaniel Garrow, but Jesus, he was just so apart from everyone else in his legion. It was just crazy to think of him as, how could he possibly be a Death Guard? I mean, the way you read him, the way the Barbarsis, I can never remember the name. Mortarion's world, Barbarous. I think it was Barbarous. But Barbarous Death Guard were just jerks and bullies, and they reminded me of I think Bolt and Doyle from the Power Rangers bullies. They were on there. They were just, yeah, just utterly bleh. I'm hoping to see more out of Typhus. I like what I see Typhus doing in 40k, basically slapping Mortarion around, saying, no, I don't think you are understanding. You may have been a Primarch of the Imperium, but when it comes to the forces of Nurgle, I am the beloved son, and you're just sort of this wretch. You didn't come to Nurgle and worship him. I delivered you to him. And that just kind of cold calculating, you know what, you're my bitch now. I gotta hand Typhus that, because it's not the Typhus I see in the Heresy and in other places. The second in command that is on the boat with Nathaniel. I won't say anything more about that, but that character is just designed to be loathsome, repellent, and unlikable. That's what he is. They even describe him amongst the Death Guard. They point it out so that you have even more reference for it, how much they don't like him from other things he's done. And then there's Nathaniel Garrow, who's striding through like a knight of old amongst the Death Guard, like the one respectable one, and everybody hates him for it. Oh, it's a whole reaping madness. But that's what you got to do to maintain lore consistency, and I got to give it to him. Garrow is one of the interesting left fields they throw out there in the Horus Heresy. He wasn't alluded to previously. The Flight of the Einstein is very, I think maybe minorly alluded to, that it happens and that a ship brings word from Isfahan of what's going down, but that is an awesome original story that they've kept going and brought him into the universe, and I hope that they can do that again and bring that around, especially with this Dark Imperium thing, because right now the broad swaths and the huge time jumps are a little disoriented. And I'm not saying I'm not appreciating it and I don't like it. I'm just saying I haven't gotten my feet yet about where everything is, because I play guard, and in the course of some of these events that are just unfolding in history, my entire regiments are born and die of even old age. So it's hard to build sort of a character I have an attachment to with any of them. So I make them pretty generic at this point, and then I flesh out stories around them, and then I build more guys going forward that way. That's just what I do. But I'm hoping the story will stabilize. We'll get some major events. I'm really banking that Vigilus is going to be where this regiment ends up writing its story. But who knows, we might go back to Armageddon. That is a demon-wasted, crazy thing. Either that or Games Workshop intends for no one ever to go back to it ever again, and that it's just a demon hellscape and lost. We'll see what they do with that. Because we really also haven't gotten a scope of how bad Imperium Nihilus is. Or really the Imperium on this side of the Cicatrix either. We just don't know. We know that lots of places have been saved and that lots of places haven't, and a lot of other places are status unknown. So it's going to be a while before we really know what the state of the Imperium is, and a lot of places we've come to know in the lore could really just blink out of existence at any point, and we should be prepared for that. More lines. Well, that was pretty bad. Alright, got that cleaned up. And we just keep going. More we keep going, closer we are to done, and the steps we don't have to do tomorrow, and we can get to the more fun steps. Infantry is going to take the longest, so we're focusing on it first. Head down, plow through, and then we will recover. And when we get to the tanks, we'll start having even more fun. Lore will be more fleshed out. There'll be more graphics, things like that. Guests will be stopping by. Gonna also be uploading some of the old interviews I've done with some of the big names in the gaming industry, Brian Fargo, Andy Chambers, and the like. And so people will be able to review all that in the archive videos we're going to put up from the old site, and it's going to be fun. And now we're back as Crimson Bet, formerly part of the LGO network. Yeah, lost a bristle there. Always a pain. Let's get that armor up under the guns. Like I said, I normally don't attach the guns, but these guys were assembled for a different project back when that weren't going to need to be painted. These guys were mostly going to be part of a diorama statue. So painting them gray with speckled marble chunks in them. Didn't really need to take the arms separately to get that done. Now I'm sort of regretting that, but I got skills. I'll get around it. I was wondering, I'm using actually a regimental brush from the War Games brush series. They're fantastic. I've used this brush so much I've actually worn the label off. So, but yeah, this is a regiment brush. It's a great way to just get large areas done in no time. And stuff like this where I'm just doing the top coat of the armor and all the mistakes will get covered up by the rest of the uniform paint. This just gets the job done so quickly. And it lets me just power through models at an astounding pace, which is what is needed when you set yourself crazy deadlines like 15 days to paint and fully build 1750 for a tournament, all guard, mostly infantry. I mean, I definitely, some of the choices I am taking solely because I can paint them faster than an equivalent cost of infantry for the same amount of points. So that is probably going to be the biggest disadvantage to my list, is because of that, my list sort of looks like I've made the rookie mistake of trying to pack too much into a list. But while that is true, I plan to A, use that perception to my advantage, and then act unexpectedly with that against what the expectation would be for someone who's oversampled. And 2, I've actually picked a bunch of... I have 2 main thrusts in the army, and I've picked the units around those thrusts. And while they might not be enough of any individual thing to super focus on its specialty, I think in synergy, the different thrusts that I have put forward in this army will be substantial risks to either ignore, and definitely costly to put a committed committed attempt to repulse them into it. And I think I've got them designed in such a way that if a person undercommits to one side or overcommits to one side, leaving them undercommitted on the other, that thrush will push through, and hopefully I will time it and plan it and maneuver correctly, and that'll get me the win. But for me, it is about having fun. I could get crushed every game of this tournament. All 3 games I could get absolutely wiped out. But if I gave my opponent a good game and a good challenge to wipe a guard regiment out, great. That's just as worth my time for that weekend as it can be. Nope. Come back. Man down. Got a man down. He's okay. We're good. All right. Oh, there we go. We keep moving through them. But there still always seems to be more on the bench here. So let's go for another one, and then we'll take a quick break. Or actually, that might be... You know what? we're going to call it for the evening, actually, here, because I realize it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So I will be back on tomorrow with finishing up the major push through the infantry to get jackets and pants done, along with the armor. And then we're going to move on to some of the specialist troopers, and hopefully we will get all the infantry done and base coated by hopefully Sunday. That way next week we can start fresh on the vehicle chassis and some of the specialist units that'll have a different color scheme. I'm doing all the infantry first, mostly because if I got the wet pallets, I want to save the paint. And I want to stay in line and keep my focus one direction or another. So we'll be on tomorrow a lot earlier than we were tonight. And we're going to hit back to this, and everybody can see my just continually deteriorating state as I do this project. And we'll discuss the news as it's going forward, and hopefully we'll have some guests come by and talk about their stuff and maybe bring their armies by to view. And it should be a lot of fun. So thanks everybody for coming along. Thanks Brett for coming in and commenting. Appreciate having a friend come by, and I will see everybody tomorrow. But I'm going to attack the rest of these models with my mold line trimmer and give them a quick reprime, because there's just too many that missed it in the first batch. So have a good night, everybody, and as always, the Emperor protects. Oh no, let's not do that. Ew. What an outro line. Just good night, everybody.